how we're related to the Rayneses?
I think so, yeah.
Well, okay. It's like a double, it's just like my meeting my husband Ted. You know, my cousin Pearl. She knew me and she knew that. Okay, my mother had a mother, Hadasar, and she had a brother. Her youngest brother was Joseph Raynes.
So your grandmothers.
My grandmother.
On her mother's side.
My mother, well, my mother was married. She was an orphan. Both of her parents had died, so I didn't know them. But anyways, I knew the mother. Anyways, so her brother was Uncle Joseph Raynes. Okay. So that's how we were very close because my mother was considered a sister. Mr. Raynes had a wife and they had some children, 5 children, but they considered my mother was the oldest because they always liked my mother very much.
But your mom, that wasn't her parents, really.
What? So that
was her uncle.
Okay, that was my mother's uncle.
Okay. Joseph Raynes.
Okay, Joseph. Well, he had a wife. Her name was, what we called her in Jewish, Auntie Chaiki, but her name was Ida. Okay. Now, she was a first cousin to my father's mother. Do you understand that?
So Ida was first cousins
My
to your father's mother.
My mother had a my husband. My husband was Frank, and his mother, who lived with us all the time, her first cousin was
Ida.
That was her first cousin. So that's how we know it. So we know that family from both sides. We know that from my mother's side, and we know that from my father's side, because the first cousin was kind of important to my grandmother, but my dad, my mother, was very close to the Rayneses. And you know where the Rayneses got their name? It wasn't that way in Europe. There was a name, they were in some place in Europe, and their name was Strechkovsky. And when they came to this country, they lived in New York, and they decided they weren't going to use that old name anymore. And they were going to use either their mother's name or their father's name. Their father's name was David. And the mother's name was called Raynes. It was called Rainey. So they all picked which one, and they picked out Raynes. Her name was Rainey, so they made it Raynes. And that's where the name comes from.
What was the original name?
Strechkovsky.
Strechkovsky.
So does that mean that your grandmother's last name was Strechkovsky?
No. That would have been her name. That would have been her name.
So that's your mother's name was Strechkovsky.
That's right. Hadasar. That's an interesting story. The Rayneses in New York did very well. One of them became extremely wealthy. And we went to visit my girlfriend, and we decided that we would. My mother asked me to please call this uncle, his name is Nathan. So I call him. He says, "Could you come over for dinner?" So we took something, and who drives us home? With the chauffeur. We're sitting in the back, and we're just pinching myself. And this was 1938. And what did he give me? He was very happy to have me. He loved my mother, and he gave me a $100 bill. And
Which in 1938 was probably a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I said, Raynes, I'd like to give you half of it, but I can't do this. I'm going to go. I saw a dress. We went out. We came to New York the day before, and we saw a dress. And I'm going to go and buy that dress. And Bernice, and whatever is left, I'll split with you.
So Bernice White was with you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bernice White is up in years too. I talked to her the other
74
day.
years ago. You think about it, that's,
I talked to her the other day.
you know, it's crazy. That was where Atlantic